They asked me a simple question. I gave a simple answer. And that answer cost me everything. It wasn't a lie. I wasn't trying to be tough. I just said what I thought was the polite thing to say. But when the rating decision came back, I realized I had made a huge mistake, and I wasn't the only one. Thousands of veterans walk into C&P exams every year thinking it's just a formality. They figure the VA already knows their story. Their records are thick, their symptoms are real, and they've served with honor. But what no one tells you is that the words you say, the exact phrases you use during that short exam, can make or break your entire claim. This video isn't about scaring you. It's about preparing you. Because there's one phrase veterans regret the most after these exams. One sentence that seems harmless, maybe even respectful. But the second it leaves your mouth, it quietly undercuts your credibility and damages your case. And once it's in the examiner's report, getting it reversed is like pushing a boulder uphill. So if you've got a claim in progress, or if you know someone who does, keep watching, because I'm going to walk you through 7 critical mistakes veterans make during C&P exams and show you exactly what to say instead, so you don't lose the benefits you've already earned. Let's get started. Saying, "I'm fine" when you're not. It sounds harmless, maybe even polite. You sit across from the examiner, they ask how you're doing, and without even thinking you say, "I'm fine," or maybe, "It's not too bad." You're trying to stay humble, maybe not complain too much. But here's the problem. That one phrase just told the VA that your condition isn't serious. C&P examiners aren't there to interpret how you might be feeling. They take what you say at face value and write it into their report. So, when you say you're fine, that becomes part of your official record. And when a rater reads that, it undermines everything else you've claimed. You might have pain every day. You might struggle to sleep, move, or concentrate. But "I'm fine" suggests it's manageable, even if it isn't. The VA isn't looking for heroism in your answers. They're looking for evidence. And if your words don't reflect the daily reality of your condition, they'll assume you're overstating your disability elsewhere. That's how honest veterans end up with low ratings or flat-out denials, all because they didn't want to seem like they were exaggerating. There's a deep culture in the military of toughing things out, pushing through pain, and minimizing discomfort. That mindset keeps you alive in combat, but it can cost you dearly in the claims process. The C&P exam is not the time to downplay what you're going through. It's the time to be uncomfortably honest. So, if you've been dealing with pain, anxiety, flashbacks, or any condition tied to your service, don't sugarcoat it. Don't default to "I'm fine." Instead, speak clearly about how your condition actually affects your day-to-day life. Talk about the things you can't do, the pain that doesn't go away, the ways it disrupts your routine. You're not complaining, you're telling the truth. Because the truth is, "I'm fine" may be the phrase veterans regret the most, especially when it comes back to haunt them in a denial letter. And, unfortunately, it's only one of several common mistakes. What many don't realize is that even body language can send the wrong message, and we'll get into that next. Acting normal during the exam. You may not realize it, but your behavior during a C&P exam can speak louder than anything you say. And the worst part? You might be doing it without even thinking. Most veterans walk into these appointments trying to put their best foot forward. Maybe you sit up straight, make eye contact, try to be respectful and cooperative. After all, that's what we were taught. Show discipline, don't complain, don't make a scene. But here's where it backfires. When you look and act fine, even if you're not, the examiner often assumes you're not as disabled as you claim to be. Let that sink in. You could be in pain, exhausted, barely getting through the day, but if you mask it out of habit, your silence becomes evidence against you. Let's say you have chronic back pain that flares up when you sit or stand for too long. But during the exam, you sit still the whole time, trying not to fidget or show discomfort. You're just trying to be respectful. But what the examiner sees is a veteran sitting upright without issue. They write it down as no obvious distress, and suddenly your pain looks like an exaggeration. Or maybe you've got severe anxiety or PTSD, but you've trained yourself to smile and nod during interviews. You don't rock, you don't pace, you don't show nervous energy, so the examiner notes cooperative, appropriate effect, and that becomes the official narrative. Never mind what happens when you leave that building and the anxiety crashes back in. This isn't about faking or exaggerating symptoms. It's about being conscious of what your body is doing and how that matches the reality you're trying to explain. If something hurts, show it. If you're anxious, don't hide it. If standing too long causes you discomfort, say so, and more importantly, let it show. You've trained your whole life to push through pain and maintain composure. But in this moment, that discipline could be working against you. And it gets even trickier when you realize that sometimes the examiner isn't just listening. They're watching everything from how you walk in, to how you sit, to how you breathe. But what's even more damaging than looking normal? Saying the wrong thing about your daily routine. And that's what we're covering next. Downplaying how bad it really is. One of the most common and most damaging mistakes veterans make during a CNP exam is saying, "It's not that bad." And the moment those words leave your mouth, the damage is already done. Why? Because VA exams are all about documentation. And when you tell the examiner that your symptoms aren't that bad, even if you meant it as a way to sound strong or not complain, it immediately signals that your condition may not be serious enough to warrant a higher rating. Here's the harsh truth. Minimizing your condition doesn't make you look brave, it makes your claim look weaker. Maybe you only meant it's not that bad today, or it's manageable with medication, or other people have it worse, so I try not to complain. But guess what? The VA isn't evaluating how tough you are. They're evaluating how your condition affects your daily life. And if you're not telling the full truth, they can't see the full picture. Think about this. You've spent months, maybe even years, dealing with chronic pain, sleepless nights, panic attacks, or memory loss. But the minute you try to tough it out in the exam room, even verbally, you're setting yourself up to be misunderstood. There was one veteran who told the examiner, "Yeah, my back hurts every day, but I've learned to live with it." That one sentence cost him his claim. Why? Because the examiner noted that he was coping well and minimally impacted. But in reality, he was missing work, couldn't sit through a movie, and hadn't played with his kids in months. Another vet said, "My depression comes and goes, I have good days and bad days." Again, honest. But without context, that makes it sound like it's occasional or manageable. What she didn't say was that her bad days leave her stuck in bed, unable to shower or eat. That context matters, and without it, her words were taken the wrong way. This doesn't mean you need to dramatize or exaggerate. It just means being honest, especially about your worst days. Describe what your life looks like at its most difficult. The VA isn't rating you based on how you feel once a week or how well you hide it. They're looking for how consistently your condition impacts your ability to live a normal life. So, if you're tempted to brush off your symptoms with, "It's not that bad," stop yourself. Because every time you downplay your struggle, your benefits slip further away. Next, we're going to talk about a phrase that sounds helpful, but can quietly sabotage everything you just said, saying, "I just want to get better." At first, this phrase sounds harmless. In fact, it sounds healthy, hopeful even. But during a CNP exam, saying, "I just want to get better," can quietly work against you in ways you might not expect. Here's why. When you say that, it can suggest to the examiner that you don't believe your condition is permanent, that maybe with time or treatment, you'll improve and therefore don't need long-term compensation. And if there's one thing the VA pays close attention to, it's whether your condition is chronic and persistent. Of course, it's normal to want to improve. Every veteran wants to feel whole again. But in the VA's world, your desire to heal can be mistaken as evidence that you're already doing better or that your symptoms are temporary. And that's where the disconnect begins. One veteran, dealing with PTSD, told his examiner, "I'm working on it, I just want to get better." He meant that he was going to therapy, trying to hold a job, doing the right things. But what the examiner heard was, he's improving. He's optimistic. He doesn't need the same level of support. His rating came back lower than expected, and his appeal took over a year. It's not that the VA is punishing hope. It's that they're not rating your mindset. They're rating your limitations. You can be doing everything right. You can be in therapy, on medication, and actively trying to get better. But if your daily life is still being disrupted, if you still can't sleep, if your anxiety still flares in public, if you still can't hold a steady job, that's what the VA needs to know, not what you hope will happen one day. Another vet said, "I'm doing okay. I just want to move forward." Again, admirable sentiment, but it left the examiner wondering, is he actually okay? Or is he just trying to stay positive? And unfortunately, the system doesn't give the benefit of the doubt. So, what should you say instead? Be truthful. Say, "I'm doing everything I can, but these symptoms still affect my daily life." Or, even with treatment, I struggle with underscore, underscore, underscore. It hasn't gone away. That shows effort and honesty. It shows that you're not giving up, but also not pretending everything's fine. Because in that room, you have one job, to describe the reality of your condition, not the version you wish was true. Agreeing with the examiner just to get it over with. It's one of the most overlooked mistakes veterans make during their CNP exam, and it usually happens when they're tired, frustrated, or just ready for the whole process to be done. The examiner says something like, "So you're able to walk around the block with no issues?" Or, "Sounds like your symptoms are manageable?" And instead of correcting them, the veteran just nods and says, "Yeah, I guess so." Not because it's true, but because it's easier than explaining. This tiny moment, that quiet agreement, can undo months or even years of building your case. Why? Because the examiner is writing everything down. And when you casually agree with a statement that downplays your condition, that's what ends up in the report. Suddenly, your chronic pain doesn't sound so chronic. Your panic attacks seem like a rare occurrence. And your mobility issues? They vanish with one unchallenged question. Veterans fall into this trap for all kinds of reasons. Some don't want to seem confrontational. Others assume the examiner has already made up their mind. But here's the truth. Every word counts. And agreeing just to keep the conversation smooth can cost you everything you've worked for. If you're asked a question that doesn't reflect your reality, don't nod along. Correct it respectfully, clearly, and briefly. If they say you're sleeping okay and you're not, say so. If they assume your condition isn't that serious, don't just let it slide. Say, "Actually, it affects me more than I think people realize." These conversations are uncomfortable, but so is living with a disability that the VA doesn't recognize because you agreed with a false assumption. Your goal isn't to argue. It's to clarify, downplaying the impact on daily life. There's one phrase that seems harmless on the surface, even polite, but has quietly ruined more CNP exams than most veterans realize. It usually sounds like this: "It's not that bad," or "I've learned to live with it." It slips out when you're trying not to complain. You don't want to sound dramatic. So, when the examiner asks how your condition affects your life, you soften the truth, just a little. Maybe you say, "I still manage," or "I can do most things on my own." But here's the problem. The VA isn't rating your ability to deal with it. They're rating how much your service-connected condition disrupts your functioning. And when you downplay that disruption, the record reflects someone who's coping, not someone who needs support. Let's say your back pain makes it hard to sleep. You wake up 5 times a night, you toss and turn, and you're exhausted every day. But instead of saying that, you tell the examiner, "I get by." Or maybe you suffer from PTSD that makes crowds unbearable. But in the moment, you just say, "It doesn't bother me too much anymore." That one comment, even if it was made to appear strong or composed, can sink your claim. The VA relies heavily on documentation. They don't know your daily struggle unless you tell them clearly. So don't hold back thinking it's honorable to tough it out. Toughing it out is how most veterans got here in the first place. The CNP exam isn't the time for modesty, it's the time for accuracy. Instead of saying, "It's manageable," say, "I struggle with this every day." Instead of, "I'm used to it," try, "It limits me more than people see." Those small shifts in language tell the truth without exaggeration. And more importantly, they give the examiner the full picture. Because what happens next could depend on that one sentence. And if you minimize your condition now, don't be surprised if the VA does the same. But what happens when your pain flares up during the exam and the examiner still says, "You look fine"? That's where we're headed next. You don't look sick, and why that doesn't matter. It's one of the most frustrating things veterans hear during a CNP exam. And sometimes it's never said out loud. You just feel it. The examiner glances at you, sees you're well-groomed, speaking clearly, maybe even cracking a joke to ease the tension, and silently checks a box in their mind. Looks fine. But here's the harsh truth. Many service-connected conditions aren't visible. Chronic pain doesn't show up on your face every second. PTSD doesn't come with a name tag. Tinnitus doesn't make you limp. And yet there's this unspoken assumption that if you look okay, you must be okay. This is where so many veterans get shortchanged. They think being composed helps their case. They smile to seem polite. They don't cry, don't shake, don't raise their voice. And the examiner interprets that as a sign of stability, even if your nights are sleepless, your relationship strained, and your life barely held together. Let's be clear, you don't owe anyone a performance. But you do owe yourself honesty. If your condition affects your sleep, say so. If you avoid grocery stores because of anxiety, don't skip that detail. If you've had to change jobs, routines, or relationships because of what you're going through, make that clear, even if you're holding it together in that exam room. Looking well doesn't erase invisible symptoms. What the VA needs and what your claim depends on is not what's visible during the 20-minute exam, but what you live with every day. That means describing your worst days, not just the ones when you manage. It means painting a picture of your real life, not just the version that fits neatly into their checklist. Because too many veterans walk into that room thinking they have to prove they're not weak, and they leave with a denial letter that proves the system never really saw them at all. So don't let someone else's assumptions write your story. Speak up, speak plainly, and trust that telling the truth, even when you don't look sick, is the strongest thing you can do. Now that you know what not to say during your CNP exam, let's bring it all together. Most people don't realize how much one sentence can cost them until it's too late. Whether it's saying, "I'm fine," downplaying symptoms, or assuming the examiner already knows what you're going through, these small slips can lead to decisions that change your life forever. And for veterans, those decisions aren't just about paperwork. They're about dignity, stability, and finally getting recognition for what you've endured. You might think that being modest or tough is the right way to approach the exam. After all, in the military, admitting pain wasn't encouraged. But this isn't the battlefield anymore. This is about survival in a different way. And silence here doesn't earn you respect, it earns you rejection. The biggest mistake veterans make isn't exaggeration. It's omission. Not speaking up. Not fully explaining how bad things really are. And sometimes it's saying a phrase that feels harmless in the moment, only to find out it buried their chances of approval. The truth is, no one can advocate for you like you. No doctor, no examiner, no file sitting on a desk somewhere can capture what it's like to live with service-connected trauma or chronic pain. That's why you must make it clear. Be specific. Be honest. Don't filter your story to make others comfortable. This exam isn't about pride, it's about the truth. And if you've earned these benefits, you deserve to be heard. So, the next time you walk into a CNP exam, remember what's at stake. Your future health care. Your financial security, maybe even your peace of mind. Don't let a single phrase undo the years you've already survived. Prepare, be clear, and speak like your life depends on it, because for many veterans, it absolutely does. If this video helped shed light on something you hadn't considered, share it with someone who needs it. And if you've had a CNP exam or are preparing for one, let us know in the comments what you've learned or what you wish you knew earlier. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay informed, stay strong, and take care of each other.